page, there are 6 handshakes that you should not give. 2 of them are missing, okay? 2 of them I've left out. So we're going to get into those so that we can have a couple of laughs. Could you do me a favor? Since you all know each other, turn to your neighbor, give them the dish rag. People like this. Oh, disgusting. Okay. Turn to your neighbor, give them the jackhammer. Don't hurt them. Right. Good. So you know it. How do you feel when someone does that to you? Now this is really funny and this is really cute and you're having some laughs. Let's get back to being serious. If you do that, you're down the tubes 55%. It's that simple. Turn to your neighbor, give them the guided missile. That's right. Looks like this. Here, looks like this. Watch. Here's how it looks. Oh, what's up? Good to see you. Right? Do you ever see people do that? They come from the other side of the room. They're coming at you. Okay? The only one that really looked good, and you can check me out on this, the only one that looked sexy when he did this, you got to start watching the old Clark Gable movies. You watch, you're going to say John was right. Gable could come down steps and do that. Watch his old movies. He'd come like this, all the way down the step. Never miss a step, right? And he looked good. Today, it doesn't work. Okay, I need a volunteer. Sir, would you mind? Hi, sir, I'm John. You are?
Wayne, help me.
Wayne, good to see you. By the way, Wayne has an excellent handshake. All right, now the 4th one is called the smother. The smother comes in 3 parts. Could you stand back here just so everybody can see? Thank you. Smother comes in 4 parts. Excuse me, 3 parts. Don't ever do this to anyone, especially when you meet them for the first time. Plus, depending on how you do it, especially in the 90s, you got to be careful. It could be considered sexual harassment. Can you come up here for a minute, Wayne? Okay, this is smother. Don't ever do it, ever. This is smother. Don't ever do it, ever. And this is smother. Never, ever do this to anyone. Or that, okay? All right, you got all 3? Boom, boom, boom. What you do to people you know, different. Not this. Thank you. Be careful. Be careful. He's great. They used to call that the preacher. It used to be called the preacher. But now there's so many problems with that also, they change it to the smother. It's the same thing. Don't ever touch anyone like that. This is called professional communication. Don't do it. Number 5, the knuckle crusher. You know that, right? You know that one. They don't let go until they hear a bone snap. And you're like, would you let go of me? And they're like, but your thumb didn't snap yet. I have a new story just happened to me this weekend. My mother is in a cast because she was at a gathering at the townhouse, at the, what do they call it? Well, the meeting house where they live. And this gentleman shook her hand and fractured a bone. You know, she's not arthritic. She doesn't have any problems with her bones, but he broke the thumb and didn't mean it. She came home and I said, Mom, what happened? And she said, somebody broke my hand, shaking my... I said, they didn't break the hand. They did not break the hand. That's not right. They broke the thumb. And I said, well, how hard did he squeeze you? And she said, very hard. You know, and it just like that. You know, so you got to be, now there's some things, well, how hard should I shake a woman's hand? Which we're going to talk about. But it does not matter if it's a man or a woman. You got to be careful of the grip, right? I mean, plus you don't know who you're dealing with who is arthritic, correct? Or has some type of problem with the hand. So now she's in a cast for 4 weeks. Just this little thing goes over the thumb and around the wrist, but still. And imagine how he feels. Okay. Number 6. the clammy fish. You know what that is? That's that wet, slimy hand. And when they touch you, you're like, oh, God. Where did you just have your hand? So now, there are two things you need to know about this wet, slimy, clammy fish handshake. Number one, chances are very high that they're nervous meeting you. Number two, chances are very, very high that they're sick or have a flu or a health problem and they're perspiring out of their hand. Now here's a good question for this group. When you shake someone's hand and it's wet, does 55% think, oh, they must be sick? No. What's 55% think in less than 15 seconds? It's disgusting. Correct? Now there are a couple of things you can do if you do have this wet handshake. Especially if you meet people, this is critical to start a conversation. Number one, if you meet a lot of people at the same time, we highly recommend you just carry a glass with you, wet glass. And just like that all the time, and do this. Hi, pleasure to meet you. Literally, nobody's ever been grossed out by a hand that came off of a glass, ever. But remember, 55% of visual don't do this, hi. I don't do that. So that will work. Some people, I had a guy in one class, and I did not know until the end of the conversation, he had a mental problem. He was obsessed with his wet hand. And he came up to me on a break and he said, you didn't give enough information on the wet hand. And I said, well, I don't know what to say about it. What did I leave out? He says, you don't understand. Look at my hands. People think I'm gross. People don't want to touch me. I'm disgusting. People think I'm sick. And you had to see his hands. Literally, you could see the perspiration on his hands. And then that's when he said to me, I'm seeing a therapist for it. So then I knew he had a problem, right? He was just obsessed with it. So I said, well, use the wet glass. He says, the wet glass doesn't work. As soon as I dry my hand, my hands are wet again. So I said, well, what are you doing? He says, well, I try not to shake people's hands. And I said, well, does it work? He says, if it doesn't work, I have another trick. So this guy opens up his jacket, and he's got this pocket with this huge lump. Huge. So I said, what's that? He starts pulling out paper towels, like a magic trick. You ever see a magician doing this? Woof, 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 woof. He keeps rolls and rolls of paper towels shoved in his pocket, and that's what he does. He walks around with his hand in his pocket, which I wonder is what's making the hand sweat to begin with. And what he does when he walks up to someone, it's literally this simple. He pulls the hand out slowly, dries it off, and shakes. But then he said, between drying it off and touching them, in that brief second, the hand's soaking wet again. So, he's got a problem, a gland problem, something. So I said, well, I don't know. I don't have any answer. I don't have all the answers. So, good luck. What could I do? 3 months later, he calls me and he says, do you remember me? I'm the guy with the wet hand. Because you'll have my phone number there. And I said, I remember. How you doing? He says, a miracle happened to me. Really? He says, teach all your classes. Remember you said you don't have all the answers? I've got an answer for you. Teach all your classes the following. I've healed myself. What? Every morning before I leave the house, clear antiperspirant. Right over the hand. He says, it is a miracle. I am totally cured. He says, you had to hear him. He was thrilled. He says, two things you got to tell your groups. First, you can't wash your hands anymore during the day. Because if you do, then, right, you got to carry it with you and reapply it. If you do that, which he says he has done. But he says, second, be sure you tell your groups it's got to be the clear kind. Not the white flaky stuff. People are like, oh. So.